Churches are some of the wealthiest organizations in the world. They take in millions of dollars tax-free in order to help out their community. And while some small churches really do some communities good, there are other religious organizations with a dark and terrible past. It would seem that greed, power, and religion wouldn't mix, when, in fact, the Vatican is just the opposite. With that said, we present you with 5 dark secrets the Vatican doesn't want you to know, number 2. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. They are the biggest financial power on Earth. A lot of you might already know that the Catholic Church is the biggest corporation in the United States. It has a branch of office in every neighborhood. Their assets and real estate holdings exceed those of Standard Oil, AT&T, and US Steel combined. Its roster of dues-paying members is second only to the tax rolls of the United States government. A member of the New York Catholic Conference was quoted as saying that his church ranks only second to the United States government in total annual income. Wow. The financial position of the United States includes assets of at least $269.6 trillion and debts of $145.8 trillion to produce a net worth of at least $123.8 trillion. Trying to find this information on the church is nearly impossible. But there are some things we do know. The Catholic Church, once all its assets had been put together, is the most formidable stockbroker in the world. The Vatican's treasure of solid gold has been estimated by the United Nations World Magazine to amount to billions, along with the facts that the Catholic Church is the biggest financial power, wealth accumulator, and property owner in existence. It is a greater possessor of material riches larger than any other single institution, corporation, bank, giant trust, corporation, or state in the world. And the church owns the largest store of the world's most priceless art. The Pope, as the visible ruler of this immense amassment of wealth, is consequently the richest individual alive. The Vatican has large investments with the Rothschilds of Britain, France, and America, with the Hambros Bank, and with the Credit Suisse in London and Zurich. In the United States, it has large investments with JP Morgan, Chase Manhattan Bank, First National Bank of New York, Bankers Trust Company, and others. The Vatican has billions of shares in the most powerful international corporations, such as Gulf Oil, Shell, General Motors, Bethlehem Steel, General Electric, International Business Machines, or IBM, DWA, which I'm not sure what that one stands for, etc. The Vatican Bank manages $64 billion in assets on behalf of its 33,400 customers, according to a December 5, 2014 article in International Business Times. Or IBT? It owns $764 million in equity and keeps gold reserves worth over $20 million with the US Federal Reserve. According to a May 29, 2015 article in Reuters, for the fiscal year 2014, the Vatican Bank reported about $76 million in net profit, more than 20 times the $3.16 million reported for the previous year. So why don't they want you to know? Well, because if their people knew how much money they had, they'd be reluctant to give or donate to an organization that has so much wealth and power that it would make King Solomon blush. Number 4. The Vatican Bank hid Nazi gold. According to a 1946 document from the Treasury Department, the Vatican may have both held and smuggled Nazi gold during World War II, despite being a neutral entity. The document, which was brought to the attention of the public in 1997, said the Vatican Bank held 200 million francs, which was worth about $254 million in 2016, for the Nazis. According to a rumor cited in the document, that money was later funneled through something called the Vatican Pipeline to Argentina and Spain, where it was given to Nazis who fled prosecution for war crimes. The Vatican Bank also apparently funneled money that was stolen from Serbs and the Jewish by the Ustaše, who were a Nazi puppet regime in Croatia. At the end of the war, the Ustaše started plundering from the victims of their ethnic cleansing campaigns and then smuggled 350 million Swiss francs, which is worth about 440 million US dollars, out of Yugoslavia through the Vatican. The money was then used to support the murderous Ustaše organization while they were in exile. Good work, the Vatican, if that's your real name. In 2000, a lawsuit was brought against the Vatican over this issue, but the suit ultimately failed. To this day, the Vatican's archives, which are likely the only source that could directly tie the Vatican Bank with Nazi gold, have remained sealed, and for good reason. But it wasn't the only gold that the Vatican helped the Nazis with. The Vatican also helped thousands of Nazi war criminals and collaborators escape after the Second World War. This is according to a book that puts together evidence from unpublished documents. The documents, which are discussed in author Steinacker's book Nazis on the Run: How Hitler's Henchmen Fled Justice, offer a significant insight into Vatican thinking, particularly because its own archives beyond 1939 are still closed. The Vatican has consistently refused to comment. The belief is that the Vatican's help was based on a hope for a revival of European Christianity, and the Church dreaded the Soviet Union. Through the Vatican Refugee Commission, war criminals were knowingly provided with false identities. Number 3. The worst confessions. Catholic priests have some pretty awesome powers when it comes to granting absolution for committing crimes. This includes forgiving people for things like murder or mass murders and even genocide. That's right, if you're Catholic and you chop up the family next door and eat them, you can go to a priest, ask for forgiveness, and he could forgive you in the Word of God. Not only that, but the priest could never tell the police. Despite this, there are 5 sins that are so grave that priests can't absolve them. Instead, inside the Vatican, they have a secret tribunal called the Apostolic Penitentiary, which looks at cases involving these sins. This secretive tribunal has met off and on for the past 830 years, but in January of 2009, for the first time ever, its members held a press conference to discuss their work. 3 of the 5 sins that they contemplate can only be committed by the clergy. If you're a priest who breaks the seal of confession, a priest who offers confession to his own sexual partners, or a man who has directly participated in an abortion and wants to become a priest, then your case must go before the tribunal to receive absolution. The other 2 sins can be committed by anyone. The first, desecrating the Eucharist, is particularly bad because Catholics believe that the bread and wine transubstantiate into the body and blood of Christ. Messing with them is like messing with Jesus, which, no matter your thoughts on Christianity, seemed like a pretty cool dude. And then there's the sin of attempting to assassinate the Pope. Can't imagine they're gonna absolve that one. The meetings of the Apostolic Penitentiary are kept confidential because they're a different form of confession. The sinner is referred to by a pseudonym, and only the major penitentiary, Cardinal James Francis Stafford, decides how the sin shall be dealt with. Presumably, a bunch of Hail Marys doesn't cut it. Number 2. Roman Catholic pedophiles. Ugh. Let's turn our attention to the Catholic Church and its role in human trafficking. Here's a bit of history for those that didn't take world history or religion classes or were instead passing notes during class. Roman imperialism was handed over to the Roman Catholic Church and merged terrestrial power with ecclesiastical power, earthly and heavenly power. Thus, the immoral debauchery that was the failing Roman Empire was handed over to a supposedly moral organization that was based upon teachings of love and compassion. What could go wrong? Just you wait. The failing Roman Empire co-opted the Christian Church in Rome due to the desire to have the renewed sources of youth and liveliness that the empire had been drained of through continuous war, and the Christians seemed to have in abundance. Love and compassion sounded a bit better than universal Roman dominance and slavery. The early church morals soon faded as terrestrial powers, through the 7 deadly sins, corrupted the ever-growing Christian empire. When Constantine declared Rome to be Christian and moved to the Eastern Roman Kingdom, he again ruled the known world with earthly and heavenly power. But Christian morality didn't get in the way of massacring thousands in the name of the new Roman Christian Empire, later known as the Holy Roman Empire. At different times in history, the Pope of the Roman Catholics was also the greatest warrior of his time. Sorry, ladies, we're getting there. The popes wearing armor and war attire was normal in the long history of the oldest corporation in the world. The continuation of Roman slavery became conversion to the Pope or death to every culture who got in the way of papal imperialism. War was just standard operating procedure for the Vatican. It wasn't until the deceit and espionage of the Jesuits took over the remnants of the Templar Knights, called the Knights of Malta, that the Catholic Church was able to effectively manipulate kings and nations without having to go to war itself. Kings became the pawns of Vatican espionage and Jesuit intrigue. The Jesuits infiltrated every monarchy of Europe by establishing court schools that trained the new monarchs in the way of the Jesuits. This still continues to this day with the 24 US Jesuit colleges and universities that train our politicians and elite. Since pedophilia and slavery were institutionalized in Rome, the Roman Catholic Church is well versed in these machinations. There have been centuries of child abuse and pedophilia in the Catholic Church, and as we know, an abused child is more likely to become a child abuser. Thus, the genesis of pedophilia in America and throughout the world is taught to children in Catholic schools. The dissonance of being taught morality while being treated immorally creates the split in the human soul that can allow the evil of child abuse and torture to exist in the soul of a child trained in a Catholic school or a parishioner in a Catholic church. Pope Francis has said that a child abuser is committing an act of, quote, black magic, unquote. Black magic rituals and human sacrifice often accompany the abuse of children. These rituals are, in fact, a defiling of the Catholic sacrament of Holy Eucharist, the ritualistic eating and drinking of the body and blood of Jesus. So, if you thought that the pedophilia problems were a new and recent thing, now you understand where and how they began. Number 1. Catholicism and child sacrifice. The atrocity of close to 800 emaciated children's bodies buried in an Irish nun's septic tank represented the 44th child mass gravesite linked to the Catholic Church. You may have heard about this story as it came out in 2017, but it's not the only one, that's the thing. Catholic mass grave sites comprising of 350,800 missing children have been found in Ireland, Spain, Canada, and other countries. This is an organization that's supposed to help refugees and orphaned and abandoned children. In fact, Pope Francis was being prosecuted by the International Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels for allegedly trafficking 300,000 children of political prisoners through Vatican Catholic charities during Argentina's dirty war. According to witness testimony, some of those orphans ended up in a child mass gravesite in Spain. And recently, the aforementioned International Common Law Court of Justice prosecution was trying to figure out what happened to 50,000 missing Native Canadian children. There have been 32 child mass grave sites uncovered so far in Canada, most of them on Catholic-run Native residential school grounds. The Vatican, United Kingdom, and Canadian government have refused excavation of 32 Canadian mass grave sites believed to be filled with Native children. Before licensed archaeologists were turned away, human remains of children were uncovered at the larger sites in Brantford, Ontario, and Port Alberni, British Columbia, Canada. The 2013 award-winning film Philomena depicted the plight of 2,200 infants who survived Ireland's Catholic homes. The children were forcibly adopted or placed into child labor for these so-called adoptions, and insisted verifying documents were lost in a fire. Critics contended the Catholic Church had an ongoing reluctance to hand over internal records of Vatican Catholic charities out of fear further horrors could come to light. Such was the case in the Irish Magdalene laundries, where unwed mothers performed forced labor without compensation to 4 Catholic orders. After years of successful litigation on the case, victims still remain uncompensated. The ICLCJ court case in Brussels charging Pope Francis and other global elites for crimes against humanity was expected to extend for over a year. In 2016, ICLCJ court found 40 global elites guilty and ended with the unprecedented resignation of the former Pope Ratzinger. This all from a church so wealthy and powerful that if it had given each child that it violated or in some way lowered $1 million and a home of their own, they wouldn't even have noticed. Practice what you preach. You preach. Alright, top fivers, if you haven't already, make sure to visit our other channel, The Brilliant, for even more interesting list videos that'll blow your mind. Oh, but I'm warning you, the videos over on The Brilliant are extremely addicting to watch as well. There'll be a link in the description to the channel, so make sure to come and visit us. Or you can go to our latest video popping up on screen right now. Oh, and have you visited thefinestpost.com to enjoy the most amazing articles you will ever get to read?